So my name is Mauricio, and I'm the lead test engineer at Touch Surgery, which is just around the corner. You can find me in any social media at MV Giacomello. I think I can pass with the keyboard, so right. I promise won't take long. It's a really small presentation. It's actually my first presentation ever, so bear with me. So I changed a little bit. The name of the presentation was supposed to be The Journey. So I changed to My Journey because I'm still in this journey, and I cannot tell you what is wrong or right. I'm just telling you what I've been through so far, and maybe you will take something out of it. First of all, let me talk a little bit about myself. I started in 2009 at Dell as an intern as a performance tester. It was really quite hard because I was in the beginning of the computer science course, and I jumped into a big corporation with lots of really good engineers into a really technical team. And I didn't know that tests exist when I was in the beginning of university. And it was really hard. After 1.5 years, they fired me because, I didn't know what I was doing there. I was still studying and trying to figure out what was all that. Then I was lucky enough to get a job at HP, which was next to Dell. I'm from Brazil, by the way, so I know that thing. In Brazil, we have Dell, HP, Microsoft, and a few other companies right next to each other in where I was studying. And they get paid to hire interns from my university. So it's really interesting. So I had the opportunity to work with these companies. So here, there was supposed to be an emoji of a computer which represents me starting playing with Selenium. So around 2011, I started playing around with Selenium. And after some time, everyone in HP were doing some manual testing. And I was in the middle of university. I already knew how to code. And I started to write this thing that automates the job of everyone. And I pissed off some people in the company. And after a while, they said, well, you need to move to a different team because now you're developing, and here we don't do development. So at a certain time, I found my previous boss from Dell. Okay, come back. Oh, Jesus. Okay. I found my previous boss from Dell, and he offered me a job again. But now I was actually working with test automation fully, and with Selenium. So throughout this journey, I did a lot of test automation with Selenium. I then even got a job in New Zealand. I moved to New Zealand 3 years ago, worked there as a test engineer, and hold on, the next part we'll talk later. So Selenium projects. In Brazil, I worked at HP doing all the Brazilian government internet forms, so everything that relates to the government inside things. I automated lots of that. At Dell, the warranty system, so whenever you call Dell saying, hey, my computer broke, the person that is in front of the computer talking to you is using the software I was testing. And then that was a really interesting system, by the way. And I still tell everyone buy Dell because the warranty system is pretty cool. Then I moved to New Zealand to work in a company called Orion Health. And there we made softwares for health, like for hospitals basically, and for laboratories and clinics. it was pretty cool. It touches a lot into HIPAA compliance and lots of like things that is required by the government of the United States related to health data, and I learned a lot with that. And even in the same company, we decided to make a web chat for doctors and patients to talk to each other. So it was pretty interesting. It was like a real-time application that I had to test. So in that specific test framework that I developed, there were multiple browsers running at the same time because they had to talk to each other. So the only way I could manage that was to managing multiple drivers at the same time. That was massive. And throughout, I played around with Java mostly. That was the language I learned in university, and I used that. And Cucumber, Selenium 2 and 3, and everything was done with page objects, feature files. I always say that test automation is a small part of it. You need to automate your data creation and all the other crafting that is required for testing. You don't just launch the application, click buttons. You need to know the data there is in the server, so then you can actually check what's going on. So most of the time I was like actually automating API calls or inserting things into database directly, that kind of stuff, and multi-browser and like all of that. So the thing is, this is like the introduction, and as you remember, it's the journey from Selenium to Appium. So I want to encourage everyone to go from Selenium to Appium and show to you how easy it is to do. If you know Selenium enough, you will be able to move to Appium easily. So when I was in New Zealand last year, around March, I was working in all of that doctor chatting application, and we were finishing the version 1, which was the MVP of the application to give to our customers. And I was like, what should I do next? I don't know what I'm going to do. So there was this mobile team sitting next to us. They were really friendly, they were nice, and they were doing some really cool applications for doctors and for patients. And I thought, well, I have no knowledge of mobile testing. Let me ask them if they want a tester. And I moved there to one of the teams, and I learned a lot with someone that I'm trying to hire now. Let me remember what's the next slide. Oh yeah, so then after a while, I got a job offer here in London to work at Touch Surgery. If you don't know what Touch Surgery is, we have an app that looks like this. That's cool. So that's the app that we develop, and one of them. We have a few, not a few, we have some. And it's developed for iOS and Android natively. And we have some stuff in the web as well, and lots of APIs. Next slide, come on. So then I moved to UK, started working at Touch Surgery. First day I joined, I learned that all the automated tests were written with Calabash and Ruby. And by that time I knew that Calabash was discontinued by Microsoft and Xamarin. So you know that next version of iOS, that thing won't work anymore. And our head of engineering, who's sitting there, my boss, really nice guy, he said, you have the freedom to do whatever you want with the test team, and however, we use Python in the company, and I know you write in Java all this stuff, so use Python. So we can review your code and help you. And the option that came to my mind was Appium, because I knew by the back of my head that it was something similar to Selenium, but I didn't know exactly what it was. I just knew that it was like automation for mobile. That's all I knew. So Appium, from the Appium website, Appium is built on the idea that testing native apps shouldn't require including an SDK and recompiling your app, and that you should be able to use your preferred testing practices, frameworks, and tools. There you go. That's didn't add much, right? Oh yeah. Anyway, so I started digging around, and basically it was really similar, right? You have your imports for Selenium, and you just remove this line and you add a new one. It's a WebDriver. So, right? It's pretty simple. You have your WebDriver code. Instead of going through Selenium server into the browser, you go to Appium and then to the OS or the app, so you can interact with all the buttons and screens and everything. You can check all this stuff. And I learned that the server of Appium is a fork of Selenium at a certain point, and the client of Appium, which is this one, it uses WebDriver, so it's basically everything that you know for Selenium is the same for Appium. And it talks, instead of just talking to the browsers, Appium can talk to the OS and apps to a certain level. I know that someone, I can't remember, someone here talked about Appium backdoors in a few meetups ago. That's something really interesting that Calabash had, and something that you need to do manually for Appium. You basically need to add your own stuff. Right, so looks simple, right? I just need to change a few things and it works, right? That was me playing around first day. I didn't know what I'm doing here. So first off, you cannot just take one app and automate it, because it requires some dodgy stuff. Let's say if your application doesn't have proper identifications of things, elements and everything, you won't be able to do really beautiful. You will have something like this, and no one wants to see an XPath this big in your code. It looks shit. So you need to talk to the developers. You need to talk to them and say, hey, let's add some stuff. It's not that hard to add some identifications to the elements. You can even teach me, and I will do myself. I did so far 3 pull requests, adding like my own identifications to the app, and it works. Like they say, hey, change here, here, and here, and here, and I don't need to worry about them. That's one of the problems. So now I'm listing all the problems that I found after I moved. Second, right, so you're developing one test to test 2 applications, exactly 2 applications. You have one iOS app and you have one Android app, and they are really 2 different applications that, in my case, I'm trying to create a cross platform test framework. So one test framework will test both iOS and Android. So you're trying to do the work of 2 developers. I mean, 2 software developers in test. And it's really painful in the beginning. With Selenium, you just need Selenium and your like IDE, and that's it. Your browser. That's all. For local environment of for mobile, you need lots of stuff. You need Homebrew, Node, Xcode, right version of everything, right? Java, Android Studio, the emulators, Appium, the Android app that you want to test, and the iOS app, and your backend and all that stuff. And sometimes if you want to use this simulator for, let's say, iOS, you need to build the app in a certain way that is not exactly the production app. So you need to find your way around to build the right APK. For Android, it's pretty easy. Just build APK and it works. For iOS, it's a little bit tricky. It took me a while to get that done. This is specific just to me, maybe not be your case, but I had to learn a new language while I was doing all that. And it was pretty interesting. I learned Python in a month. It was pretty cool. I suggest everyone to do that at least once. I still love Java. I'm learning some new stuff. I already mentioned this, so we are actually testing two apps, two different, completely pieces of software. In our company, we have two different teams developing that, and you are testing with one test framework, so be proud of that if you do. A few problems is, even if you are developing one test framework, you are using two different libraries. You're using, and underneath Appium, you have the Android driver and you have the iOS driver, and they are not that accurate. I mean, they're accurate, they just sometimes don't have the same functionality or is not implemented as you expect. So a few times you will see, okay, you built your whole framework for iOS, and then you try to use one method pointing to the Android app, and it will say, oh, this method hasn't been implemented yet, sorry. You need to do some workaround for Android, or you need to do some workaround for iOS. And if you go to their GitHub account and you search for Android and iOS, you will see that there are lots of things that needs to be done. But it's good. I mean, you just need to find what's the problem and work around that. One thing that bothers me a lot is that whenever I want to verify some text, iOS has some dodgy stuff. They have values, labels, text. So whenever you use Selenium, you just do element.text, and that's the text of the element, right? Or you can get the whole text of the page or something like that. For iOS, you need to know what you are looking for. If you're looking for a label, you need to get the value of a label. If you're looking for a text, it's a text. And if it's a value, I don't know, it's a value, you have a value. For Android, it's easier, just get text and that's it. This is not exactly what I have in my framework, but it's like a simple example how you would make sure your text is correct in that element. And so on, like other kind of things like that you will face whenever you say, hey, I finished automating my Android feature. Let me just point to iOS and see the small things that I need to change. Sometimes they are bigger. And moving from Selenium to Appium, you will learn that there is something that doesn't exist in web, which is swipe, pinch, scroll, double tap, triple tap, triple whatever, AA, BB, up, down, that kind of stuff. So there are some stuff that you will have to handle that you don't have in things like Selenium, like web. So shake's another one, and squeeze, now you have pixel with squeeze. So all that, you will have to learn that you need to do something. The good part is Appium has all this neat library that you can create multiple things. You just say, you create an action, a touch action, and you say press and move and release. And then you can do another one, press, move, and release. And then you say, hey, run all of them. This is used in our app for whenever we want to simulate cut. Like let's say we want to cut your arm here. So you touch, you press, you move, and you release. That's how you cut in the app. And this is how it's implemented. And you can see here is Appium WebDriver, common, touch action, move action, you have all that stuff. And you're still a tester after all, right? You need to support your team, you need to verify all the tickets, you need to do some exploratory testing for new features, you need to make sure the quality is good, although quality is something that everyone should be worried about. You know that quality sometimes go to the tester. And in my case, I'm a lead, so I still have the other QAs that report to me, so it's quite a tough work to do. And reporting, all that. And that's it. Thank you.